Good morning. Welcome to Coffee with Common Cause. I'm so glad that we're all here together to talk about all the different things that have been happening this month. Mia, are you willing to move to the
I
agenda?
am. I'm just going to mute everybody, Catherine, for a second, and then you can
Okay.
unmute.
And the agenda is pretty simple. You'll notice I'm doing the welcome. We're going to go through some of the different kind of events that have happened, share some pictures. We'll talk about the budget. We'll go over some of the veto overrides, that the governor is dealing with and the state legislature is considering. We'll talk about an Article 5 webinar that is coming up that I hope you all will join us. So that's next Thursday at 6 p.m. Then we're going to talk a little bit, we call this the House Bill 6 updates, but really it's a little bit broader because I'm going to be talking about some of the Public Utilities Commission hearings that have been going on. Kelly's going to talk about the People's Promise. Mia's going to talk about congressional redistricting. We have mid-decade redistricting happening in other states, and so we do need to think about our own redistricting in that context. We'll talk about kind of a recent things that are happening at the federal courts, including Emile Beauvais. We're going to talk about some upcoming events, including Hands Along High in Columbus, which I think will be fun. And with that, I'm going to welcome again. I'm so glad you all are here. And Mia, I'm handing it off to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm also, if you see me looking slightly distracted, I'm just admitting people from the waiting room. So I'm just clicking on that every once in a while. Well, we last saw you on June 19th. So it's been a while, and there have been lots and lots of protests and rallies and events since then. And we really encourage all of you to send us pictures when you have fun things that you've been doing or important things that you've been doing that you would like us to share. Um, July 4th was a date that a lot of people came out, to celebrate our country and stand up for the values and the laws and the Constitution that we believe are being corrupted by and undermined by this government regime. Um, we had a fun rally at the Doodah in Columbus, where we had gravestones for things that are being destroyed. We had Lady Liberty and all kinds of other fun things. That was the Doodah parade in Columbus. Here's some other shots from Doodah. Catherine was there. Um, I was also there. Um, and all across the state, lots of things going on. There's been some amazing rallies and events in the Cleveland area. Um, they and in other places as well. A lot of folks are doing these kinds of lettered signs on overpasses, trying to spread the word about things as far as possible. Um, other places in the state, people, there was on July 17th, there was Good Trouble Lives On, which was in memory of the 5th anniversary of the passing of Congressman John Lewis. And there were events all across the state, including a really wonderful one in Columbus where Catherine was a speaker. It was held at Second Baptist, which is the oldest Black church in Ohio. It was a tremendous program. And then folks marched down to the State House from the church as well. So this is just a smattering of photos. And again, please send us others if you have them of things that you're up to that you would like us to share on the next event. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Kelly.
Thanks, Mia. Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining today. We spending a lot of time, working through all the protests, but also keeping track of everything that's happening at the State House. And so we know there was a budget process. We know there was an approved budget. Then Governor DeWine took a look and actually removed 67 items. So he vetoed quite a bit from that budget, and it's one of the most, most a governor's done in decades. And so based on his vetoes and where the budget currently stands, we do have a few impacts for elections. And so one of those was that local school board races will remain nonpartisan, which is a good thing, allowing candidates to focus on issues and qualifications. And we were happy to see that that was something that Governor DeWine brought back. Secretary LaRose's election integrity unit was codified, and so this unit has been working loosely over the last couple of years to investigate potential voting violations. It was codified into law to also include campaign finance violations. It was partially vetoed because it gave, in Governor DeWine's opinion, gave the Secretary of State too much discretion when it came to prosecuting potential violations, or starting the process to prosecute violations. And so this election integrity unit, concentrates power in the Secretary of State's office. It does give the Secretary of State discretion over which cases to investigate, including public allegations. It will open up public allegations and the ability for the public to submit their concerns. It will also include an annual report that's submitted to the governor of the work of the unit. It does give the Secretary of State subpoena power to request documents and findings. And we can keep in mind that there were more than 630 cases that Secretary LaRose thought was important to send to the Attorney General that weren't being prosecuted in the county level. Of that, it resulted in a handful that were investigated by the indicted by the Attorney General. We remember that one of those people were unfortunately deceased. We have another gentleman that actually Governor DeWine pointed out was an older citizen who had been a citizen since 1975, who actually was criminally prosecuted, had to retain counsel, and then had to work through the courts to get that dismissed. So it was very nice of Governor DeWine to point out some of the faults of what could happen without thought. And so in his opinion, the election integrity unit that was passed by the House and Senate really required prosecutors to act outside their ethical boundaries in terms of timing and having to be under the gun for a time limit in terms of when to prosecute. And so thankfully that part was removed. So the worst part was removed. We also, as a result, have more power concentrated under the Secretary of State's office through the Ohio Election Integrity Commission. So part of the budget decommissioned the Ohio Elections Commission and instead created a 5-member partisan appointed member commission. Oh, that's okay. Where campaign finance allegations and voter fraud allegations would come before the commission if Secretary of State thought was fitting, or if someone was charged with a crime or fined from Secretary of State and wanted to refute that charge, they would bring it up to the commission. And so they're looking at 4-year terms. 3 of those appointees need to be attorneys in good standing or have election experience, 4 years of election administration experience. They can't be politically appointed. They can't be political office holders on candidate committees. And so we're going to see how that plays out, but all of that will start in January. Thanks, Mia.
Yeah. And another consequence of the budget, Catherine,
I've been muted. Before I do that, I don't know if you noticed that Lori said that good morning from Cleveland yesterday included protest visits to Houston's office and a spirited protest regarding 2 doctors fired by University Hospital for advocating for patient care. And so, one of the things I think is important as we're kind of going through all these different things, when we get together for coffee at Common Cause, I really want to encourage us all, to share photos, to share information, so that we get a sense of what's happening all over Ohio. The state is just incredibly, incredibly large, and there are all sorts of activities that are happening. of course in the cities, but also in all sorts of rural communities as well. So just wanted to encourage folks to share information ahead of time, so that we can also share with you. So if you have pictures, please do. And then I am going to segue, unless people had questions about kind of the changes in election administration, I was going to segue to the changes in public records. So our sunshine law took a real hit in the state budget. And this was a real blow. And I want to be super clear that this was something that I believed that the governor would in fact veto. It was actually fairly shocking that he didn't. What it does do is it means that now I want to be super clear that this part of the budget, the fiscal parts of the budget go into effect immediately, meaning, the expenditure of resources, etc. That goes into effect immediately. But what happens is these kinds of portions or amendments in the budget, they go into effect 90 days later, just the way they do in a regular bill. Now, it is horrifying that these things that are actually not related to, shall we say, they're not related to the budget. They're just, it's not a budgetary thing. Why should it actually be included? We certainly have a single subject law in Ohio. And I think what this begins, we find that this is what happens with budgets, because it encompasses all sorts of different areas. It's easy to make the connection, and it's very hard to take that to court to say, hey, this is not related, because at the end of the day, everything is related to how the government spends money, and that's how it can be done. But is it extremely frustrating? And this is a big change that, once again, does not take effect until September 30th. So that does mean that we have the ability right now to put in public records requests. And so if you've been thinking about things that you would like to know, or you're like, wait a second, I'm very interested in education. I would like to better understand how they made decisions behind the scenes. Now, when you do a public records request, you're not asking for them to create things, you're asking for the things they have. So you're looking for things like an email between this legislator and that legislator, and you're looking for, you want to have it as specific as possible because they're more likely to respond quickly that way. But it is really problematic that we could go through an entire General Assembly and not have access to that information. It's also important to remember that this fall, we are going to be doing congressional map making. So think about this, congressional map making. So we would not have access to those records until that congressional map making is over. So Connie said, well, what about the bunker? The thing that was really important in 2011 is that Jim Slagle, who worked, at that point in my office and was part of the Ohio campaign for accountable redistricting. I know Fair Districts has had many names. Did a public records request and got boxes and boxes. They literally filled up the office. I mean, just kind of an astonishing number of boxes. And then we got electronic records. And because of that, we got to know that they made the maps in 2011 in the bunker. We got to know that they were approved by John Boehner. We got to know that they moved basically they moved district lines for a donor. Like all of the things that we learned that were really bad, when it comes to redistricting, we learned because of that records request. Now we could do the record request after the cycle is over. But one of the things that's true about open records and kind of access to information is that in fact it needs to be timely. There's nothing worse than getting the information actually after you can do something. Now, I noticed that Janine highlighted something. So Janine, do you want to jump in? Janine was highlighting basically when I talked about kind of single subject.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if adding all of this to the budget, because it's really outside the scope of the budget,
Yes.
as are the election issues outside the scope, whether or not there is an opportunity to challenge that to the Ohio Supreme Court, as because of the rule about single issue laws, especially when you have something that's added at 1:30 a.m. in the morning. But I'm not overly optimistic given the composition of our court and how they ruled on the gerrymandering issue one thing. But is that an opportunity, and is it worth spending the time and money to do that?
So it's interesting. So the reason I asked you to step in is for those who don't know, Janine was the former Ohio Consumer Counsel. And this is something that I've thought a lot about, and it's hard to tilt at windmills, and we're spending a lot of time pushing back on all sorts of different things. It also is incredibly hard to have a democracy that works if you don't have access to information. Like if you don't have, so this is it's a real problem. So it is something that I do know is being considered. I don't know what's going to happen, and it does have to do with that the Ohio Supreme Court has become increasingly well, these are the folks. I always find it hard to say this in a lovely nonpartisan way, but these are the folks that decided that boneless chicken was a cooking method. These are the folks that decided that nitrogen gas was actually not a poison. So it's hard to feel hopeful about the Ohio Supreme Court. Sometimes that's not the point. Sometimes the point is you are making the case to the public that we deserve better information, but there's just a lot going on.
Yeah.
There's also the fact that the legislature specifically excluded themselves, but not any other agencies.
Yes.
That is suspect.
Yes, it is. It also does mean that we can do public requests at other agencies that are about connections and discussions with legislators. So there is some of that.
So for the commissioning board, when they redistrict, we can go to the other agencies for that information.
Correct.
But not among the legislators themselves.
Yeah. So this is just, sadly, just so you know, this coffee at Common Cause can feel sad because that we have so many different issue areas that we're going to cover where it can feel like it's a lot. And what we want to do is give folks tools and ideas for ways to push back, but also to let you know just the kind of challenges that we have, and that it's so important that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm handing it back.
All right. And I think this is Kelly's going to tell us about the vetoes and overrides.
Yes, so the budget is still going back and forth, working through, but a week or 10 days ago on July 21st, the House did come back to discuss and vote on overriding Governor DeWine's vetoes. And so 61 Republicans did vote to override veto number 66. Remember, he did make changes to 67 different issues. So veto number 66, and this one is focused on banning key types of school renewal levies, such as emergency levies, banning replacement levies, forcing some levies to split into two separate votes, confusing voters, causing more levies to fail, more issues with processing, the elections. And so many folks in the state feel this is problematic. Veto number 66 doesn't become law unless the Senate comes back and also votes to override it. We have heard that the Senate is expected to come back into session soon to hear that, but has not yet set a date. So in the meantime, we're organizing folks to let your senator know how you feel about the House vote. You can use the link in our information that we'll be again sending out to you afterwards, also on the Google Doc, to tell them to not override the governor's budget, veto number 66, and hopefully they hear from enough folks and they consider the implications on the local level that that we're able to stop this one. Thanks, Mia.
Bye. Yeah, and so the next slide, I'm just realizing now we should really have put it at the end in upcoming events. We really just wanted to let you know about this event. Yes, it is related to pending, legislation that probably will come up again in the fall, that has been introduced in the Ohio House. But I know that this group of people on this call are very they are following, you guys are following things, a lot of things. So I think many of you have heard about Article 5 in the Constitution and the attempt to call a constitutional convention, the first constitutional convention since the original one when the document was written. And we have put together some people who are extremely knowledgeable about this issue and who are going to discuss it and unpack it and tell us what we can do to push back. That is an event that's coming up next Thursday at 6 p.m. And there's a registration link in the document that Catherine has been dropping into the chat. So this is just a heads up. Please join us next Thursday. This will be a really interesting discussion. It's one of those things that you kind of hear, Article 5, what does it mean? And when you go to this webinar, you will know all about it and why it's an important thing to prevent from happening. So that's a heads up. And now I'm going to send it back over to Catherine.
So, Shania, I'm glad you're here. So you should jump in if there's something I should add. So throughout June, there were hearings at the Public Utilities Commission. So it's important to think about what is First Energy accused of? And they're accused of collecting 450 million, so more than that, from customers. And this money was marked to actually modernize or update the electricity grid. So what's important is that the money was targeted, marked specifically so that it could be used for that purpose. But it is very, very unclear what happened to this money. So let's just start with that. Also, they're accused of using $6.6 million. And when they say ratepayer money, they're meaning our money, customers' money, for payments to Tony George. And he acted as a go-between between First Energy and Larry Householder. So, one of the things that I think is incredibly important is that we often think of, the House Bill 6 householder scandal is bigger. And so these hearings are helping us better understand not what the actors kind of in government did, but what happened with the utility. And so First Energy is accused of secretly giving more than $13 million to, basically to Sam Randazzo. Remember, he received that $4.3 million before he became the chair of the Public Utilities Commission. In this particular case, it was used essentially to encourage other industrial groups, other groups to drop their opposition to First Energy's plan to raise their rates. And so those are that's a basic overview. And then Ashley Brown. So I just think Ashley is amazing. He's a former PUCO commissioner. He is the founding director of the Harvard Electricity Policy Group. And so, when he appeared on June 25th, he basically made recommendations for the Ohio Consumer Council that are the kind of recommendations that would encourage First Energy to change their ways. So for example, hey, you have to make a refund of all that money that you essentially took from customers, so that you could update the grid. And so that's 456 million is the refund to consumers that he is recommended, or the Ohio Consumer Council recommended, and 70 million in forfeitures. So money that would just go to the state essentially. And yeah, I think what's important here is, that First Energy would feel the pain of their activities. And this is the activities connected to House Bill 6, some very connected, but also the ones that they just considered business as usual. And then Mia, if you're willing to move to the next slide.
I am. I don't know what has happened to
There's a random red dot.
my little random red dot.
and I just wanted to highlight that First Energy was like, use your discretion essentially to forego punitive measures. We've already felt lots of pain.
Crazy.
Now, this was from July 21st. This is a brief. In the I kind of kept sharing, and I'll share again right now, the docs. You can actually find kind of the briefs, and we'll send you kind of additional information. So if you're the kind of person that was like, I want to take a deep dive into this, Janine, anything I should add to all of this? Oh, you're on mute.
Okay, this issue of these slush funds for distribution upgrades have been going on since the time I was Consumers Counsel, which goes back to 2011, and we always opposed this and fought it at the Supreme Court. But the point is that culpability also resides with the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio, because they were complicit in allowing these huge settlements with these huge black boxes and a ton of money being thrown at First Energy without any kinds of audits, updates on how they were spending the money. Nothing was done. It was just given to them, and with a hope and a prayer that they would do something. So I think that, there ought to be, First Energy, of course, took advantage of it, and First Energy is the most guilty culprit. But the commission did not do their job. So I think that needs to be highlighted, and that needs to be remembered. And, actions need to be taken to force the commission to do their job and to audit these expenditures after they agree to them.
Yeah.
And I have a whole presentation and PowerPoint I do, which I'm not going to go into now, about how to do it and how to protect the customer's money. That's for another time.
And we should do something sometime soon with all of us, because I know for many of us, all of the utility work is complicated and it's hard to follow, and there are all of these details. But these are the kind of details that I, for one, like to get into. So let's think about inviting you to do a presentation sometime soon.
Sure.
And with that, Mia, oh, you know what? I also forgot to mention this one other little thing before we move, which is on July 25th, the full Sixth Circuit Court denied Householder the ability to have his case reheard. In other words, he lost an appeal. So I did want to let you know with that. And then I got lots of questions, but one of the questions I got was from David, who wanted to know what we were doing about the big, beautiful bill. And so I'm going to hand it off to Kelly to tell us a little bit about what we're doing to focus on, government that works for all of us.
Yes. Common Cause nationally is working with other national partners like the Southern Poverty Law Center, NAACP, Latin America, LULAC, the Latin America, Latin Unite for American Citizenship. And so we're getting together with those groups to really try and build momentum across the country for what's being called the People's Promise. This is, fundamental values that every American can, push back the federal administration on, including like an economy that works for everyone, a government for the people, equal rights and opportunities for everyone. And so there are opportunities, very quick opportunities to help you, for example, tell Congress just to deliver on the People's Promise. So if you haven't filled that out, through the Common Cause website, you're able to do that in the links we provide. You can also send a letter to the editor, a very simple letter, 1 to 200 words of just general sentiment of the direction that the country is going, and what you think needs to change. There are samples on there in the little submission form you can do, where on the back end, Common Cause will actually route it to your local reporters, your local news outlets, which is kind of a neat thing. There are also phone banks that folks can take part in. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 p.m., if you're interested in helping that national effort, you would join a phone bank and make calls to folks to just describe, situations that are happening locally to them, and ask people to get involved. And lastly, there's an opportunity where we're collectively looking for stories. So you can share your story if you have been impacted by decisions the federal government is making on major services, or you have struggles, or someone has struggles. It's an opportunity to provide more detail for that, where you give permission to groups like Common Cause and Southern Poverty Law Center to use those stories, again, to just build awareness and support around everybody who is struggling or discontent with, all of the decisions that are happening right now. So just another way to engage, and, we thank you for your action if that's something you're interested in doing. Thanks, Mia.
You're welcome. And I saw Mindy's comment that we should not call it the big beautiful bill, and I have to agree with that. I think that it's important to kind of make sure we don't buy into these terminology, which are essentially straight up lies. And a lot of the protesting, I think people have been very creative and very pointed and very real with their signs about the big awful bill, the big bad bill, or whatever. Other people can have some better terminologies you can put in the chat. But calling out the actual things that it does is really important.
I want to
And with
be
that,
clear that David put in quotation marks.
yes.
And I think we're all trying to figure out how to talk about things. So I think Mia's absolutely right. My apologies for calling it a big, beautiful bill.
No, not to apologize, but just to kind of be cognizant of the fact that, that's part of the whole ploy, is to call things what they're not. Anyway, moving on. Congressional redistricting. There's a new cartoon I came across this morning. I think it's pretty powerful. We've got that gerrymandering baseball bat. So in Ohio, um, the last time they drew the legislative maps, they were voted on and approved by both Democrats and Republicans. So those are Ohio House and Senate maps are staying all the way through the next redistricting cycle, that'll be after the census in 2030. But the congressional map was only passed by one party, and it wasn't a bipartisan map. So all of those lawsuits kind of ran out and everything. So we are going to be redistricting this fall. The legislature, there's the process that starts in the legislature, goes to the Ohio Redistricting Commission. So that is something that is going to happen this fall. We know that we have some good laws on the books in the Constitution around redistricting, but we also know that the folks in power broke those laws and drew gerrymandered maps anyway. And, we're being realistic when we say it's likely that those kinds of games will be played again. In fact, they're probably playing them already. and looking to have an advantage. We are, we work in coalition with fair districts, with the League and ACLU and other groups. And we will be starting our redistricting campaign, our congressional redistricting fair maps campaign on August 13th at our huddle. So we are joining you to, we're asking you to join us on the 13th and be part of that effort. So I'm just gonna, leave it at that. The article at the bottom is kind of interesting. During the Citizens Not Politicians campaign last year, Governor DeWine weighed in and said, oh yeah, redistricting, it's really bad what's happening right now. We need something better, but let's not vote for this. Let's fix it after the election. And so the Dispatch had an editorial saying, okay, DeWine, you told people not to vote for Citizens Not Politicians. So, and because you said you'd fix it in some better way, and we are waiting. And what's up with that? Of course, the way that DeWine had suggested, he mentioned the Iowa method of redistricting, which we would not be in favor of at all, because in the end, it leaves the power to decide about the maps in the hands of the legislature, which is the whole point of redistricting, is to take it away from the legislature. But it is good that the Dispatch kind of called him out and said, you were so concerned about it before, and now what? And as somebody, you folks have been putting in the chat, you are all very current. What is happening in Ohio is going to be part of a national picture, because the president has basically said, I need you all to get out there and cheat and draw some unconstitutional gerrymandered maps, and give the Republicans some more districts. We need some more districts. We want 5 more in Texas. We want more in Missouri. We want more in Ohio, so that we can be sure that we stay in the majority in the House, in the Congress. So in Texas, they actually are allowed to just, the governor can just say, in the middle of the decade, he can just say, we're going to draw maps again. That is not true in Ohio, but it's true in Texas. And so there's going to be a huge fight in Texas over gerrymandering. There's going to be a fight in Missouri, and we're going to have a fight in Ohio, but it is all part of the same picture. I found this article at the bottom of the page pretty interesting as well. There's a quote that I found both, kind of poignant, because it basically said, and again, this is just factual of what is happening out there. When Republicans are in charge, they go for broke and they gerrymander as much as they can. When Democrats are in charge, they try to make fairer laws so that redistricting is fair and in the future for everyone. And that was true in California. They passed an independent redistricting commission law, and it's certainly what we here in Ohio, people across the political spectrum, have been trying to pass laws to make redistricting fairer. But when you do that, when you are successful and you do that, it means that you don't have the power to fight fire with fire. And so that is just a kind of an interesting observation. I'm just going to look in the chat.
I would highlight that there are certain states that are Democratic.
Yes, absolutely.
Really enjoy their
Well,
gerrymandering.
I
was thinking about Illinois.
Well, that's one of the points in this article, is that
Right.
the Democratic controlled states like Illinois have already maxed out. You can't go to Illinois and say, okay, I need 5 more Democratic districts here, because they're maxed out, but you can go to Texas. The districts would be grotesque and it would not be representative of the people of Texas, but you can do it. And so
How many of you remember Tom DeLay in 2003 and the map when they redid the maps that year? And the Texas legislators ran off to Oklahoma to hide and were brought back.
I think that that certainly is being discussed now as well. You know, are they going to run away and deny the quorum? You know, so this is an issue, and this is something that you know, we will be following, and I'm sure you all will be following as well. And with that, I'm gonna, yeah.
All right, so Michael asked a question about referendum. Okay, so
Yeah.
the important thing to know is that there are 3 different stages in the redistricting. And the first stage, you know, 3/5 would have to pass the congressional map, and you would have to have 50% Democrats, 50% Republicans. So it's not going to happen. But you know, but when we think about a referendum, that's at that stage it won't work. Okay, then you have another deadline where you essentially give it to the Ohio Redistricting Commission to draw. So you remember Governor, Auditor, Secretary of State, and some legislative appointees. We can't referendum there if it's passed there. We could referendum if it's really egregious, if they pass it for that November deadline, which essentially is, hey, they get a majority. So we could do a referendum. So for referendums, so, you know, so many signatures. You know, many of us will remember, you know, the Senate Bill 5 effort and how just people came out to the street and really focused on it. It is something that could be done. It is a tool, and it's worth considering as we're looking at like what are options. That is always an option, and it's an option where people all over Ohio would have the ability to take action. And so as we're thinking about this whole process, you know, a referendum would be worthy of deep consideration.
I have a question.
But
Oh,
yeah,
yes, Michael.
If we were able to pass a referendum or get it on the ballot, what then happens?
right.
Oh, well, that's very complicated because of course the map is supposed to be over, right? Like the map that we currently have is supposed to be over. It would likely be one of those things that is determined by the courts. It is also possible that what happens is, oh my gosh, there's a referendum, there's all the signature collection. The legislature comes back and actually amends the map to make it slightly better. And if there's some kind of compromise, the referendum would end. That would be a possibility. That happened in 2011. Now it wasn't a great compromise, as you remember the 2011 map, but like when we think that's a possibility, I think it would come down to the courts. I think the courts would likely decide like what are the map we're going to use, but it likely would be the current one.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, lots of work ahead and lots of, you know, shenanigans ahead. Catherine, Emile Bove.
Okay. So I have been watching the federal courts a lot more closely. You know, usually I spend a lot of time thinking about what's going on, you know, in Ohio. But, you know, the thing that was incredibly sad was the confirmation of Emile Bove. I just, you know, every single Republican except for, you know, Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins voted to approve someone who was Trump's personal lawyer. And there were a couple different fairly serious allegations, you know, whistleblowers that came out and suggested that Bove was essentially recommending when he was at the state, you know, when he was at the DOJ, that in fact, you know, it would be okay to ignore the courts. You know, just, you know, sometimes you just have to ignore the courts. Also, there were whistleblowers that came out about the pardon of Eric Adams, New York City mayor, and also about, you know, how how the prosecutors were let go that prosecuted the folks that were part of the January January 6th that he was part of that process. And so, you know, what's really sad about this is he's now on the Third Circuit. So you're talking Pennsylvania, Delaware, Virgin Islands, and New Jersey. And I mean, it's just incredible. It's incredibly sad. This is a lifetime appointment. And then I included this quote because I was really interested. You know, here's Chuck Grassley. He basically gets, you know, the Trump's lawyer through this confirmation process. And the next day, he essentially has, you know, Trump suggesting that he needs to leave and that he needs to let go of the blue slip process. And, you know, many of us will be like, blue slip process. Basically, this means that when it comes to the appointment of judges, that the Democratic senator and the Republican senator both have to agree that this person would be a decent judge. And you know, obviously the appointee could come from a place where there are Republicans in one state or only Democrats in a state. So there are those circumstances, but no matter what, both have to actually agree. And it's a way of giving the party that's not in power some check on it, but also to ensure that the courts in that neck of the woods are have faith in that judge, that there's some sense that is somebody that would be worthy of being a judge there and could have good relationships with prosecutors, etc., in the courts there. And so I was like, good Lord, there are all sorts of different ways that the court is under attack. And this is, and we can look at the Ohio Supreme Court but when we look at what's going on with our federal courts, it's just really scary.
It is.
Anything anyone else wants to add? Because I'm not sure I did it. I hit everything that I should.
I think folks are commiserating and looking at all the scary things that might come up in the courts. Yeah.
One of the things I think is interesting, Emile Beauvais is from Seneca Falls. And you know, when we often think of Seneca Falls, we think about women's rights to vote, and just incredibly sad.
Yeah.
I also grew up in the Finger Lakes. Oh, okay. So this is, you know, one of the things, you know, I don't want us to do is to depress everyone, but I also thought it was important to realize as we are doing we're taking all sorts of actions to push back, to do what we can to have good, accountable government. I think it's really important to realize that they are watching us from outside, you know, and other countries are watching to see what we're up to. Civicus just changed our status. They call it a narrowed status. Essentially, we're among the countries that have, you know, freedom of speech. We have the right to assemble. We have a variety of rights, but there are still significant violations. And that is how we were moved to a narrowed status. And narrowed you know, like when in this survey, it includes Turkey and Serbia and El Salvador. I think it's important to realize that we are not in good company. But it's important to know that the world is watching us.
And I think we've been really insulated and isolated in America. And I mean, America is such a big country. The United States is such a big country, and most, you know, it's difficult to travel outside, and people don't have kind of experience of living in other countries. But the world is big, and if you look to history and you look to other countries, you can see how things can change, you know, pretty quickly, and how difficult it can be to undo things that happen. And I think we've kind of had this sense of, you know, we're different, we're exceptional, you know, our system is, we've got it figured out. And but actually we're quite vulnerable. I think everyone has played by the rules, and now someone is not playing by the rules, and those rules are really vulnerable. I had happened to be chatting yesterday with two folks who were originally from Germany, and historians, and who grew up in Germany and lived there, and they were talking about some of the little more detailed parallels in terms of the challenging of the president of the central bank, and and the challenging of the Fed chairman, and these kinds of parallels. And it's scary. It's a little scary. So we all want to stand up against this. And I know that groups across the state and a lot of folks have been putting things in the chat, and that is awesome. People are doing things to stand up and be counted against what's happening. And in Columbus, this is a Columbus thing, but anyone from anywhere is welcome to join on Saturday, August 9th. There's an event called Hands Along High Street, and there's a plan to have a row of people 8 miles long, from Worthington, 161 and High, all the way down to the short north, and to have people distributed along that entire stretch, in 27 segments that are each about a quarter of a mile long, about 3 blocks. And we need about 5,000 people to have this be really effective. We have about 1,000 signed up now, so we need 4 more thousand. So we're really hoping, there's a lot of folks that don't like what's happening, but they're keeping it to themselves, and they're a little bit sitting on the sidelines. And we're really hoping we can get those folks to come out and join us. Common Cause is going to be gathering in segment 24. When you go to the sign up, there is you can sign up for a particular segment. We are gathering in segment 24. We have some t-shirts and things that you can wear, or you can wear your own. You can bring your own sign. And basically, folks are going to stand with their signs, and then at 3 p.m., there's going to be a kind of moment of unity. People are going to hold hands. There's a caravan of convertibles that are going to go down, holding American flags and things like that. So we really hope that you can join. I know every protest, it's difficult to keep coming out, but this is one I think that, because it's kind of spread out, and it will really be kind of amazing. And we're going to do like a video of the whole long line of people stretching the entire route. So the signups are there. You can, I think the important thing is, if you're coming in from somewhere else, don't go to one that's already full. We have sections that already have 100 people signed up. We have sections where there's 4 people signed up. Please go to the section where 4 people are signed up. If you don't, for some reason, want to join us in segment 24, I think we have 8 people in segment 24. We need to have at least, we really need 250 people per segment. You will see when you go to sign up on the Sign Up Genius, you will see how many people are in each segment. If you're coming in from somewhere else, drive that extra mile and go to the place where you are most needed. And so, we appreciate that. If you have any questions about this, about the sign up process, please feel free to email me. I'll put my email in the chat. And we are happy to answer any of your questions. And this is, we're coming out not just about what we're against, but also what we're for. And there is a statement of values that you can read when you go to sign up. Happy to answer any questions. And then we'll go on to more upcoming events. Kelly.
Thanks, Mia. Yes, we have quite a few ways, including hands-on, that we can engage in the community. That we're promoting Parents United for public schools is actually hosting quite a few different town halls across the state, and the focus is on the future of the public education situation for children with disabilities. So with all the Medicaid and education cuts and questions looming over what's going to happen, they have set up quite a few town halls. August 5th will be in Dayton. August 6th, they'll have one in Berea. Again, we'll share all these links. Again, on August 7th, we have the threat of an Article 5 convention. So we hope you join us for that webinar that Common Cause is hosting with the Ohio Fair Courts Alliance. On August 9th is the Hands Across High Street that Mia just walked everyone through. We hope you can join, or just forward along to friends if you're not able to make it. Then August 11th is another town hall in Cincinnati for the future of public education. They also have one in Grove City the next day on the 12th. August 13th is the Fair District's all volunteer huddle. So that is going to focus on the congressional map making kickoff. So an exciting meeting for sure. August 13th is another town hall in New Philadelphia for the future of public education for children with disabilities. And then August 28th, you can register now for your next Coffee with Common Cause, because who doesn't love getting up in the morning and talking with us about all of the things that are happening? So we appreciate you joining. Lastly, we're continuing to mention on September 20th, we will have an in-person meeting for election protection. This will be our second annual in-person in Columbus, and the link will be provided there where you can sign up and join us all. There were about 100 people there last year. Lunch is provided, and it's just a good opportunity to level set as we prepare for the election, and meet in community and talk about all the upcoming planning and logistics of what goes into helping make sure everyone has access to the ballot. So thanks, Mia.
Yeah, and Christy, so sorry. We should definitely have included your event in this list. Cincinnati's having a town hall. Christy, do you want to come off mute and tell us a little bit about it?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so hi, I'm Christy. I lead an organization called Coffee Compassion Action. Let me take my glasses off so you can kind of see my face without the glare. Let's see. The speakers are going to be Brian Hambly, Vanessa Enoch, Congressman Landsman's going to send a video, and a surrogate, her name is Kelly, and I forget her last name. Donnie Isaacson contacted me this morning and said, hey, I'm going to attend, and could I speak? You sure can. We're also going to have some citizen speakers with this We Want a Word section, which is like you get 2 minutes to speak to your absentee representative, and it's curated. But I'm super excited because the CEO of Free Store Food Bank is going to speak for 5 minutes.
Wow.
And then we have NIOSH, someone from NIOSH is going to speak during the 2-minute word. After that, we'll have the speakers, and then we have over 15 organizations tabling. Ohio Coalition Against Qualified Immunity, Working Families Party, Rank the Vote Ohio, Hamilton County Dems, Westside Dems, Pleasant Ridge Dems, a whole bunch of different organizations, some of them very crucial for systemic change. How about Common Cause? So I'm very, very excited. It's at the New Prospect Baptist Church in Roselawn. That church is pretty significant because the pastor, Damon Lynch III, has been active in racial justice in Cincinnati for a very long time. His grandfather was a civil rights leader. So I picked that church to try to create some coalition and have some more diversity. I'm very excited, and it's me. I'm a public school teacher, and I fronted the money, and then I've had a lot of people donate. I'm very excited. And then the other thing I might want to throw out is that Coffee Compassion Action, that's my group, has combined with Southwest Indivisible and Indivisible Cincy. So like our Cincinnati groups are coming together, which is very scary because I don't have much of a leadership other than me and a couple other people. But yeah, August 12th, Ohio Town Hall. That's what I'm calling it, Ohio Town Hall. And yeah, you should come. And I know it's pretty far for some of you, but I'm very excited.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And that's
welcome.
really a kind of, you know, everybody can just, if Christy can do it, you can do it. Everybody get out there and organize your thing. Yeah. So congratulations and thank you for doing that. Thank you to everybody for being here. Catherine, Kelly.
Well, I just wanted to say, we are living in really troubling times. And what helps me keep going are opportunities like this to talk about, what the challenges are and to figure out, well, how do we go forward? I noticed that there was a question about, will Christy's contact information and all of that information be included? Christy, are you okay with your contact information being included? Yes, it will be included in the email. I just wanted to say, the more we come together in the community, the more we're able to come up with solutions and the better we're going to get at how we talk about these things and how we can communicate with others in our communities so that we can actually create a democracy that works for all of us, government that works for all of us, a life that works for all of us. And with that, Kelly, any final words?
I would just say thanks to everyone. I learned something new all the time from this group. And so it's so great to be part of everyone that's so engaged. So thank you for joining today.
Thank you guys so
thank
much.
You all.
We'll see you soon.
Be well. Oh, it's good to see everybody's faces.